Hello everyone, today we're gonna tie a very classic Danish sea trout fly. I don't think you can meet a fisherman on the coast in Denmark and ask him what his favorite fly is without at least 9 out of 10 mentioning this pink piglet, or the Pattegris as we call it here in Denmark. It's a very alive shrimp pattern with these long spey hackles, and when you fish it, it has a very nice hover in the water, and it's sinking relatively slowly. Fishing on an intermediate line is a great pattern for sea trouts. I've been using it a lot through the years, and it's also kind of a difficult fly to get right, because there's some elements in this fly that make it a little difficult, and that's why I'm making this video. There's a lot of videos on this fly already on the internet, but I have some fixes and some methods that's gonna make it easier to tie and easier to make it look like you want it to, and also it's gonna last longer for fishing, and that's always a plus when a fly takes a long time to tie. The hook I'm tying this fly on is a light stinger from Eric's, and this is a size 4. You can tie it in any size you want, but this is the most used size in my box for all round steam trout fishing. I'm just gonna start out with a white thread, a GSP thread. I could use a pink thread, but honestly I don't really care about that little white head. I would much more prefer the strong thread. You could paint it in with a marker later if you want to, but yeah. Just gonna start up by making a base of thread here, making sure all the materials is gonna stay in place when I tie them in. And the first thing I'm gonna do here, and the first trick, is to make a little ball of dubbing here at the back of the fly. And what this does is it's gonna take all the materials and lift them off the hook in the direction I want it to. Because one of the most difficult things about tying the pink piglet is not having the fly follow the hook around, and the more materials you have under here, the more likely the fly is gonna hook up on itself and on its own fibers, and you're gonna spend a lot of time taking out materials. So just a small ball of dubbing here in the back, and it's very essential that this is very tight. It's not gonna be a loose ball, because it gotta have some structure. So now I'm ready for my first piece of material here, and this is gonna be the mallard feather, which is just a natural color feather, and just gonna represent the mouthpiece. Kan du lige tænde lyset on in?
What?
Tænde lyset.
Yeah, of course.
Just gonna turn on the little light here. And what I'm gonna do here is just gonna take the point of the feather and cut it off, like so. Because then what I can do is just, after I remove all this fluff here, is just tying in on the top of the hook here with a few loose wraps, and then just pulling the feather through until I have the length I want. And I don't like it too long, because I don't want it to be that apparent on the fly. I'm just gonna have a little bit of dark material in between all these pink hackles to represent the mouthpiece. It's optional, I'd say. It's 50-50 whether I put this in or not. Now I'm ready for my first spey hackle, and there's a lot of hackles on a cape like this, with a lot of length feathers, and find something that works for you. I like to have some that's with a feather is approximately 1.5 times the length of the shank. And what I'm gonna do with this feather is I'm gonna take it and tie it in at tip. So I'm gonna find the tip here and take all the material and just brush it back with your fingers, like so. And I'm just gonna tie in the tip here. And what is most difficult about this fly is all these lively materials. They love to get hooked up in the thread and the dubbing and everything else, and the back shield as well. So take your time with it. It's gonna take a little while. Just gonna placing my hackle clamp here. I'm just gonna wet my fingers a little bit and take all these lively materials here and brush them over. And I'm just gonna take the thread out of the way here. Just gonna start winding these constantly making sure that all these fibers are going back over the fly, not in front. I'm just gonna wrap it nice and close here. And it doesn't matter really how long or how far on the hook you get, because I'm gonna tie my thread on top of all the materials in the end anyway. So just take a, if you get a little bit of materials intertwined, just take your hackle needle and just pull it out. And I like to stop when I have a little bit of the fluffier feather parts as well. And this is what's gonna make the fly bulk up. So the more you put in of these, the more bulky your fly is gonna look. So find what works for you. And I'm just gonna, when I'm happy here, I'm just gonna catch the stem with the thread, tie around, make sure it doesn't go anywhere, and then just gonna cut the stem here. There, and just pull this out. So now I have a nice bouquet of long spey hackles here. And this is one of the most essential things when I'm tying this fly. So I'm gonna take all these feathers, most of them anyway, I'm gonna pull it to the top of the hook like this. And then I'm gonna tie it down. And what this does is gonna make sure that there's not a lot of hackle fibers in the hook bend. And it's not gonna look empty, if that's what you're thinking, because I'm gonna have a body hackle as well, a palmer hackle at the body. So you're gonna fill in the space. It's just gonna make sure that all these long fibers are less likely to go and get caught in the hook bend. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna take a little more dubbing. No, before I take the dubbing, I'm gonna put a little weight on the fly. And I'm just gonna lose some non-lit wire here. Just one piece, twirl around each other. I'm just gonna put it on the stomach of the fly. And what this is going to do is making sure that all these, despite all these long fibers, I'm gonna be able to make the fly stand right in the water at any given moment. So I'm just gonna tie this in. Make sure you're a little bit over perfectionist on this one, because if you have some exposed materials, exposed metal here, it's gonna be a little bit harder to make your material stay where you want it. So there. And now I'm gonna take a little bit of dubbing here, and I'm gonna make the ball of dubbing that's going to support the eyes, and also it's gonna take the back shield I'm gonna put on then last in the end, and it's gonna lift it up to make this fly have the right, you know, like shape. And what I'm doing when I'm putting in the dubbing on this fly is I'm twisting it for every turn, making sure it's gonna stay firmly around the fly, the thread, and there's not gonna be a lot of loose materials here, because one of the things that's difficult about this fly is making it look light and making it look like it's not just a ball of material, because you're putting a lot of stuff on this fly, and if you're not careful and putting in the absolute minimum, you're just gonna have a bulky fly, and it's gonna be difficult to put in the things afterwards. So be a little bit meticulous about this part. There. And I'm gonna take, before I put the eyes in, I'm just gonna put in a little bit of ribbing. And this is just made out of fluorocarbon. This one is 16.5 millimeters, and you can use whatever you have at hand, nylon, whatever, it doesn't really matter. I will say this though, if you're going well above 0.25 millimeters, you're gonna have a difficult time making the segments in the body afterwards. So that's why I'm using fluorocarbon. I can get away with using a thinner diameter, and it's much easier to make the fly with. And what just did there is just making a simple half hitch on my rib here, and I'm just gonna pull a few loops of thread around. I'm just gonna pull the knot right up to my thread, and I'm just gonna tie down on both sides. And because my ribbing now has this little lump, it's not gonna go anywhere. because that's one of the most frustrating things in the world when tying this fly, is when you get to the point where you're gonna wind your body and the ribbon goes there. Just gonna get that out of the way. I'm not gonna put in some eyes, and this is just simple easy shrimp eyes. I find this is the easiest ones to make this fly with. And I'm just gonna put them in and tie them right above where the eyes join down here. So I still have the thread holding on to each individual eye instead of just making the turns on this plastic thing. Because this is gonna make me able to just adjust a single eye instead of just adjusting the whole thing. And I'm gonna take my scissor and take this plastic part and just gonna cut it into a point. And this is gonna make sure that this piece of plastic is gonna follow the tapering we're already building on. Like so. And if your body at this point is a little bit rocket and you see a little bit of plastic and stuff everywhere, you could clean it up with a little thread, but basically don't worry about it because you're gonna put a lot of materials on top of it, and this is really the dubbing that's gonna determine how my body is gonna look in the end. But before I put on the dubbing, I'm gonna have to put on my second body hackle here. And this is just like around half the size of the initial hackle. And what I'm gonna do here, I'm just gonna take these fluffy parts in the bottom. I'm not gonna need those. And tie them off. And then I'm gonna tie in the thick part, the feather here, making sure this is gonna stick really nice. I'm not gonna go anywhere, I'm just gonna put it double there. Cut off my excess and back. And what's really important about this fly is every time you tie something in, you have to go back to the starting point. Even if I just gave it like 1/4 of a millimeter every time, you would end up with a head of the fly, what you could call it, it's too long. So you don't have any body, and you don't have a lot of space to put in your back shield, and this is gonna make the fly look weird. So always all the way back. So now I'm gonna take my dubbing and I'm gonna form my dubbing body, and this is just gonna be exactly the same principle as everything else on this fly. I'm gonna make a tight dubbing body, because when I start winding this hackle stem, if I have a lot of loose materials on it, it's just gonna be impossible to determine which way these hackle fibers is gonna go, and the fly is gonna look like something you might find under your bed. So I'm just gonna start off lightly with a little bit of dubbing and just gonna making sure that I'm wrapping it really tight here. I can still take my dubbing brush in the end and take up some fibers. That's not a problem at all. I'm just gonna make sure that it's not gonna be too much. Like so. Making sure I don't put too much material near the eye, because I'm gonna have to put a lot of more materials in there. So if I took my dubbing and put it all the way to the hook eye, as thick as I do all over, it's gonna be really hard to make a nice and even head. So this is gonna be the next trick here, because this is one of the most difficult parts about this fly. The original pattern dictates that you take out your poly yarn or whatever you're using here and just gonna demonstrate. Just cut it off into a point, wind your thread, and just pull this in so it fits. And this is the original way, and this is the right way, what you would call it, to tie it. But what's the problem with this is you're tying on top of a lot of plastic material, and it's gonna be really hard to make a really nice finish up here. So what I'm actually doing is I'm taking the half of the material that I wanted to do originally. I'm just gonna tie it in at the middle of it. Like so. I'm just gonna fold it over and lay it double. As you can imagine, this is not gonna go anywhere now. I can pull it all I want and it's gonna be nice and tight. But before we do that, we have to wind the hackle. So what I'm doing here is just gonna find the point of the hackle, making sure I don't catch too many of the fibers I want them to fly. And I'm going for around 5 laps here. 4 is also okay. Same principle, always making sure your hackles is going backwards on the fly, like so. Getting that evenly spacing is what I'm gonna make this fly beautiful. So, tying off the stem. I like to put it back here and just giving it another little fold here so it doesn't go anywhere. There. Now we're ready for this material here. And what I'm gonna do here before I put this in is I'm gonna take my dubbing brush and just take most of the fibers that is on top where the back shield is gonna lie and just brush it down to the side. Like so. So I have a nice even surface to wrap this on. And then I like this stripe before, at the middle. Making sure it's on top here. Like so. Folding it over, securing it. There. And then I'm gonna find out a tool that's just like a soft brush. You can use a toothbrush if you want. It's really easy. It's very important that it's not a stiff material like, you know, the steel brush on your dubbing needle or something like that, because these fibers will snap and you're gonna catch this material as well, making it very difficult to make a nice and even seal. So I'm just gonna fold this over. Taking out my ribbing and just brushing on the other side of the ribbing here, making sure I don't catch too many fibers with the ribbing. And this is what it's all about here. Pulling it back, making it nice and tight, and catching it down. And now I can just use this dubbing brush here, soft brush, to pull out the spey hackles without taking any of the materials out of the fly. Like so. And again, I'm going for around 5 laps here. Take your time on this. It may look easy, but it's really the hardest part of this fly. And it's what is going to make sure that this fly is nicely looking. Just around. Making the space a little smaller as we go. So we get this nice segmentation of the body here. Last time. And there we go. Catching up the ribbing here, pulling it back over, laying it double, and forming a little head here. Finish. There. Cut off. Now I'm gonna cut this shield here. And there's a lot of ways to do this. People like just cutting it between the eyes, some like to cut it at an angle, some like to cut it like this. I'm just gonna do it like straight, just behind the pupils of the eye here, like so. I'm just gonna take my thumbnail and just making sure that this material is just even at the top here. Cutting off my ribbon, like so. If you have any fibers left here, just making sure to take them out. There we go. And it's the last stage. I'm just gonna take this steel brush here, turn the fly over, and I'm just gonna start taking out a little bit of dubbing. The more dubbing you take out here, the more fluffy your fly is gonna look, and it's very individual here. There we go, the pink platelet, or the Pattegris. Remember to subscribe and visit our website, of course, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.